Alright, what's going on everyone? Today we're going to take a look at another World Championship winning deck in Magic the Gathering's history, and this time it is the deck that won in 2015, Abzan Control. A green, black, and white deck that combined a lot of great black control magic with some very mid-rangey Abzan creatures to take down the tournament. Standard at the time was composed of the Theros block, the Khans of Tarkir block, the M15 core set, as well as Magic Origins. The tournament would take place in Seattle, Washington, and the deck would be piloted by Seth Manfield. Alright, so let's just rip the band-aid right off. The deck played Siege Rhino, a card that dominated Standard and was the bane of many people's existence. It's a 4-mana 4/5 with trample that deals 3 damage to the opponent and you gain 3 life when it enters the battlefield. So it had a pretty decent battlefield presence, being a 4/5 with trample, and the life drain effect could be really obnoxious, particularly in multiples. Siege Rhino would frequently turn the tide of battle in any given game of Magic simply because it's so big and it creates that 6-point life swing when it hits the battlefield. So it was really good in Standard. And then it was backed up by Thoughtseize, Ultimate Price, and Hero's Downfall. Thoughtseize rips a card from the opponent's hand at the cost of 1 mana and 2 life. Ultimate Price can kill a monocolored creature, and Hero's Downfall kills any creature or any planeswalker. And what these did was basically clear the way for the Rhino. This deck really liked to disrupt the opponent's game plan early, and once both players were deprived of resources, it would start smashing face. But that's not the end of it, oh no, because it also played Silence the Believers, Bile Blight, and Languish. Silence the Believers can exile a creature, and potentially multiple creatures if you can pay for Strive. Bile Blight gives target creature and all creatures that share a name with it -3/-3, so it's a pseudo board sweeper, and Languish gives all creatures -4/-4, which usually sweeps the board of most creatures, but conveniently leaves the Rhino alive. If you haven't figured it out by now, this deck was really good at keeping the board clear, which made the Rhino all the more deadly. I mean, honestly, it's called Abzan Control, but it was basically a Siege Rhino deck that was built to keep the board clear for the thing to win the game by itself. But we are still not done, because the deck also played Tragic Arrogance and Abzan Charm. Tragic Arrogance makes each player choose an artifact, creature, enchantment, and planeswalker, and then sacrifice the rest. So it was basically another board sweeper that, once again, conveniently left the Rhino on the battlefield. Abzan Charm was also a removal spell, allowing you to kill big creatures, as well as giving you a way to draw cards, which is important in a control deck, as well as put +1/+1 counters on your Rhino, which was relevant since it had trample. So this pretty much summarizes this deck. Strip the hand out, kill creatures, and then play Mr. Pokey Face and go stomping. That's Abzan Control in a nutshell. However, since it's a control deck, it does need ways to generate card advantage, and it did it with Tasigur the Golden Flame and Den Protector. Tasigur has Delve, so you rarely have to pay the full 6 mana for his 4/5 body, and he also allows you to pay 4 mana to generate card advantage. So you can't pick the exact card that you want. Ultimately, you're going up in card advantage, so yeah, it's pretty good. It's also a 4/5, so it's a relevant beater that can just end the game. It also doesn't die to Language, so that's relevant as well. Den Protector, on the other hand, has a Megamorph, and if you Megamorph it, you get to put a card from your graveyard to your hand. This is a little bit clunkier, and you can only do it once, but you get to pick the exact card, so it's pretty decent. And then continuing on the value train, the deck also played Coarser of Kruphix and Nissa Vastwood Seer. Coarser of Kruphix was really good in Standard because it could brick wall aggro decks based on its power and toughness alone, being a 2/4, and then you also play with the top card of your library revealed, and you get to play the top card if it's a land. This ensures that you hit a lot of lands, and it also helps you draw into more gas since you can churn through those lands that are sitting on the top of your deck. No one likes to draw lands, but hey, if you got a land on top, you can play it with Coarser of Kruphix and increase your odds of drawing something relevant relevant during your draw step. Plus, you gain a life every time you play a land, which can add up to a lot of life in a mid-rangey control deck like this, since it could drag games out for a long time, and this life gain combined with the Siege Rhino life gain made this deck very resilient in general. It was a control deck that had a lot of ways to just buffer its life total. And then all of this extra land also helps with Nissa. She's a 3-mana 2/2 that lets you tutor up a forest when she enters the battlefield. And then if you control 7 or more lands, she flips into a planeswalker. And that is a lot easier to achieve with the help of Coarser of Crewfix flooding the board with all the lands off the top of your deck. She flips into Nissa, Sage Arcanist, and her +2 ability is another thing that works well with the Coarser. You reveal the top card of your library, and if it's a land, you put it onto the battlefield. If it's not, then you still put it into your hand, so you're going up in cards regardless. This works well with the Coarser because if the top card is a land, you can play it, gain a life, and if the next one is a land, you can plus Nissa and put that onto the battlefield as well, gain another life, and then, have another card on top, maybe get through that land so you can draw into more Siege Rhinos or more removal spells, whatever. And on the other hand, if the top card isn't a land, you can plus Nissa, draw it, and have another chance to have a land on top for the Coarser. So they actually work pretty well together. Just lots of top of the deck manipulation in a control deck. You don't normally see that outside of blue. Typically when you think of, being able to filter your draws, you think blue, but here, Abzan just had lots of ways to, kind of manipulate what it's drawing. Nissa can also minus to put a 4/4 token into play, which is great since she helps clear the battlefield by giving you tons of removal cards from the top of your deck, and her ultimate basically wins the game by giving you an army of 6/6 creatures to kill your opponent with. So yeah, there you go. And then finally, the deck also played Elspeth, Sun's Champion. Her +1 ability floods the board with tokens, which can be overwhelming for a lot of decks, especially since this deck was so good at blowing up the opponent's side of the board. Her minus ability is a board sweeper. It kills a lot of your own stuff, but it is there if it's necessary. And the ultimate gives your rhinos wings, and it also makes them bigger as well. And that's it. Taking a quick look at the mana base, it played Windswept Heath because allied colored fetches were printed in Khans of Tarkir. It played Temple of Melody and Temple of Silence, which come into play tapped but let you scry 1. It had Llanowar Waste and Caves of Koilos, which deal 1 point of damage to you if you tap them for their respective colors. It also had Sandstep Castle and Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. The castle taps for all 3 colors of the deck, and Urborg is basically a basic swamp that also turns all of your other lands into black mana sources, so you can play all of those double black mana spells. And then it played some basics. You might notice that it's lacking swamps because again, Urborg was essentially the basic swamp in the deck. And then taking a super quick look at the sideboard, as always we won't go super in depth here as that requires an understanding of the entire metagame, but the deck played extra copies of Tragic Arrogance, Bioblight, and Ultimate Price so it could change up those ratios as it saw fit. It also played Duress, Drown in Sorrow, and Glare of Heresy. Duress is another hand disruption spell. Drown in Sorrow is a mini board sweeper that also lets you scry, and Glare of Heresy is an anti-white hate card. It also had Unravel the Ether and Dromoka's command. Unravel the Ether is for artifacts and enchantments, and the command also blows up enchantments as well as a number of other things, preventing burn damage, making 2 creatures fight, and it also puts a +1/+1 counter on a creature at instant speed. It also had Fleece Mane Lion, which is a 2-mana 3/3 that had Monstrosity, which turned it into a 4/4 with hexproof and indestructible. And then finally, it had access to a suite of planeswalkers, Sorin, Solemn Visitor, Ajani, Mentor of Heroes, and Ugin the Spirit Dragon. You can pause and read all of these if you want, but basically Sorin pumps out tokens and gives them lifelink. Ajani distributes +1/+1 counters and digs for creatures. By the way, the +1/+1 counters were useful because you could get your own creatures out of range of Languish. And then obviously digging for creatures, fantastic, digs for rhinos and whatnot. And then the Ugin is all about blowing up permanent. So yeah, there you go. If you want to see all the abilities, feel free to pause here, but you get the idea. Anyway, that's it. That is Abzan Control, a deck with a ton of ways to blow stuff up, a few mid-range value creatures, and then beefy McPokey Face to wrap up the game. That is Abzan Abzan Control, the deck that won the World Championship in 2015. Now you are a little bit more familiar with Magic the Gathering's history and another classic deck from years past. If you like this video and want to see more like it, I have an entire playlist dedicated to these World Championship decks, and you can find a link to it in the description below. Also consider subscribing, as there will surely be more to come in the future. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.